My name is Rafael, you're watching Rock and Roll Garage, and today I'm going to show 7 drummers that the legendary Phil Collins loves. But first, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave your comment. Well, a few years ago in an interview with David Schaff, Phil Collins mentioned these drummers, and we selected what he said about them over the years, and I'm going to tell you a little, some interesting stories of connections between Phil Collins and these players. And the first one is Keith Moon. Phil Collins always has been a big The Who fan. And as you probably know, Keith Moon was The Who's original drummer who tragically died in 1978 at the age of 32. And in an interview with BBC Radio 6 a few years ago, he talked about Keith Moon, and he even revealed that he told Pete Townshend, the band's main songwriter and guitarist and sometimes singer, that he would like to join The Who after Keith Moon's death. And he says that he totally would leave Genesis to join The Who if Pete Townshend had asked him. However, Pete chose Kenny Jones first, the previous The Faces and Small Faces drummer. And this is what Phil Collins said. I think that one of the classic rock tracks of all time is Won't Get Fooled Again. And I remember seeing them on TV. They were televised from Charlton Football Ground. I saw him with this gaffer tape around his head with his headphones, It hurts to take it off if you're foolish enough to put it around. The way he played, there was no orthodoxy at all. Well, one time we were in the Top of the Pops bathroom together, me and Keith Moon, but that doesn't count. Another time I used to go to this musicians club a lot in Wardour Street and to find out if there was any work going. I was probably underage, but I used to go there and Keith used to be sometimes behind the bar. I will never forget, I bought a round of drinks which should have cost almost £1, which I know it sounds ridiculous now, but it was like 6 or 7 drinks. Should definitely have cost the best part of £1. He was giving me the drinks. He gave me 18 shillings change, and I always thought he was lovely after that. I'd asked Pete Townshend if I could join after Keith died. I was doing a session with Pete Townshend. I said, if you're looking after the dust settles, I would love to do it. But they already had asked Kenny Jones. I would have left Genesis for that. So that's what happened after on. And so the Keith Moon is the first one that he really likes. The second one, it's another drummer who also tragically died, John Bonham, the Led Zeppelin drummer, who coincidentally they were big friends, Keith Moon and John Bonham. And John died 2 years later in 1980, but at the same age as Keith Moon, the age of 32. He was a little bit younger than the Who drummer. And Phil Collins said that many times that John Bonham was one of his biggest influences. He even had the chance to play with Led Zeppelin in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, during Live Aid. But it didn't turn, it wasn't that good. Even Jimmy Page said later on that maybe Phil Collins was not the greatest choice for them, for their reunion. But he's a big fan of Keith Moon, and also in this interview of John Bonham, and also in this interview with BBC 6 Radio in 2016, he said that he had the opportunity to see John Bonham playing before Led Zeppelin, much before Led Zeppelin. This is what he said. I saw John Bonham play at the Marquee Club with Tim Rose, who was an American singer, and he did this hit version of Morning Dew. And he was on tour, and I had this guy, John Bonham, on drums. I went to see Tim Rose, but when I saw Bonham, I had never seen anything like it. He had the best bass drum of anybody I've ever seen, and I became a convert there. And then, so I started to follow him wherever he was doing Rude to be playing in a band. Next time I saw him was with Led Zeppelin when they were still called the New Yardbirds. The early Zeppelin was something to behold because nobody was doing that. And that was what Phil Collins said about Bonham. He was a big fan of Bonham, and Collins said many times that he considered John Bonham one of his biggest heroes. And the interesting thing is that he became a good friend of Robert Plant, the Led Zeppelin vocalist and main songwriter alongside Jimmy Page. And Phil Collins even helped Robert Plant to start his solo career in the 80s. And he played with Robert. He helped him a lot in the 80s. And even Robert Plant credited Phil Collins for being the one who helped him to really be able to play music again after John Bonham's death, because Robert was a big friend of John Bonham as well. And Bonham helped Robert Plant a few years before when Plant lost his young son Carrack at the age of 5, if I'm not mistaken. We already recorded a video about this here, and you can watch below about it. And this is what Robert said in an interview with Vulture in 2023, which is quite interesting. He said, he came on tour with me and basically said, Robert, the guy that sat behind you for all those years was my hero. That was it. He said, anything I can do to help you to get back into fighting shape again, I'm here. That was the time when In the Air Tonight came out. Yet he was still mixing and working with me while kicking off a particularly impressive and successful time. And there's another interesting thing about John Bonham and Phil Collins, is that John Bonham was not really happy when Phil Collins beat him in a drummer's poll back in the 70s. And this is quite interesting because Melody Maker, the famous magazine, did a poll with their readers, and Phil Collins was the drummer who had more votes, and he won. And in an interview with Steve Newton back in 2010, John Bonham's son, Jason Bonham, recalled how his father was pissed off about this. And this is what he said. He said that his father made him play the drum parts of Turn It On Again to prove that even a little kid could play the songs. And this is what he said. I think Phil Collins had just beaten him in the Melody Maker drummer's poll. He came in and said, play this. So I went over it a few times. Then he said, yep, okay, that's his cool. I think it was probably his way of going, hey, what's the big deal about that guy? My son can play that. So that's what he said about his father not being happy about Phil Collins winning this poll. And the third one that we're going to talk about is Ringo Starr, who is also one of Phil Collins' biggest heroes. And Phil Collins said many times that Ringo tends to be overlooked because people are also going to mention, when you talk about the Beatles, they're going to say, oh, Paul McCartney and John Lennon were two geniuses, and George Harrison also the quiet one, etc. And people forget about Ringo, who, in Collins' opinion, although he was not flashy, he didn't do anything, something really different, but he did what the songs asked for. He did what was needed in the songs. And in an interview with Rolling Stone in 2016, he recalled that he was, when he was a teenager, he appeared in the movie, the 1964 movie Hard Day's Night. He was at the audience. And there's a really interesting interview for the documentary, 2008 documentary, The Beatles, Rare and Unseen, that he talked about Ringo's influence. And this is what he said. Ringo is a fantastic drummer. There was a period in the 70s, probably, I think, where people like Buddy Rich were saying Ringo couldn't play, and everyone was thinking he was very simple. But it just wasn't. If you listen to the drum fills in Strawberry Fields Forever, A Day in Life, Rain, it's just staggering. what he did. He didn't ever do anything that you would normally do. It's not the kind of thing that a drummer naturally sits down to play like that. He would just play these very complicated, tricky fills naturally. So I've got a lot of respect for him as a drummer. He was playing the drums in regular bands. It's not as if they found him. He was a drummer, and he always said that he just wanted to play. He was a drummer. So he got very offended when people started calling him his drum fills silly little drum fills, because he felt he was pretty good. He never wanted a solo apart from that one which he was persuaded to do on Abbey Road, but he does things very unconventional. So this is a part of what he said about Ringo Starr. And we move to the next one because it's a big list. We got a lot to talk about. Who is Buddy Rich? Now, Buddy Rich was also an important drummer for Phil Collins, because he was not only a rock and roll fan, but he listened to jazz and many other styles. And Buddy Rich was a jazz drummer. And in this interview with BBC Radio in 2016, he also praised Buddy, and he said, "I think he is the greatest drummer of all time. You can say what you like about Buddy. A lot of people have said bad things. I met him once. First of all, with the playing alongside the Beatles and the Who and all the pop star, I was also listening to big band jazz. So Count Basie was someone on his band, and Buddy Rich and I came across this Buddy Rich. And I came across this West Side Story medley of Buddy Rich in 1965. Still is an incredible piece of work. If you never heard, you should. He's on top form throughout the whole thing. So for me, I just wanted to do that one day, which is why I did my big band." And he didn't have the chance to perform with Buddy live, but in 1998 he played with Buddy Rich's big band. The opportunity came after he praised the late drummer many times in interviews. He was then asked by Buddy's daughter to play with her father's big band, paying tribute to him. And he had the chance to do that in the 90s. And the next one is Charlie Watts. Charlie Watts, the Rolling Stones drummer. He was a big fan of Charlie Watts as well. And in an interview with BBC Radio as well, in 2016, he said this: "Did the big band in 98. This would have been, the Stones were playing or based in Paris anyway. He called me and he said, 'You're playing the big band show tonight and I love to come.' So I said, 'Please come.' He called just before we were supposed to leave. He said, 'I can't leave my clothes. They arrived and I have to lay everything properly.' And I said, 'Okay.' This is an interesting look on Charlie Watts, you know. Anyway, he did turn up. He was the most style I ever seen of a drummer." And Phil Collins was a big fan of him. And in an interview with Absolute Radio in 2021, when Charlie sadly passed away at the age of 80, he talked about Charlie, and this is what he said: "He was lovely, very dry. I mean, his classic line was, 25 years with the Stone, well, it's been 5 years of playing and 20 years of hanging around. You know what I mean? He had a lovely outlook on life in the Stones, I think. It's a shame he died. He's 80, or he was 80, and nothing lasts forever." And this is what he said about Charlie Watts. He is a big fan of the Rolling Stones. And the next one we're going to talk about is Tony Williams. Now, Tony Williams first achieved fame as a member of Miles Davis' second grade quintet, and also was recognized as one of the pioneers of jazz fusion. And some other artists that he worked with were Chet Baker, Ron Carter, Tommy Flanagan, Herbie Hancock, Stanley Clarke, and Stan Getz. Also some artists more linked to rock and roll, like Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist of The Doors, Alan Holdsworth, incredible guitarist who Eddie Van Halen was a big fan of, Yoko Ono, Carlos Santana, Weather Report, and Public Image Limited. Yes, the band, the John Lydon's band. And Tony Williams sadly died in 1997 at the age of 51, victim of a heart attack. And the final one that Phil Collins mentioned it and he likes a lot is Steve Gadd. Now, Steve Gadd is another incredible drummer that Phil Collins likes. He has over more than 50 years of career, and he had worked with many artists, many famous artists. Some of them are Simon and Garfunkel, Paul McCartney, James Taylor, Joe Cocker, Eric Clapton. He played a lot with Eric Clapton, Kate Bush, Bonnie Raitt, Paul Simon, and Steely Dan. And curiously, he was part of The Fugitive, the 1983 second solo album that the Genesis keyboardist and Phil Collins bandmate Tony Banks recorded. And that's it. I hope you liked the video. It's a long video, but there's a lot of interesting information in it. If you want to read more and read all the interviews, find all the links and etc., you go to the description and visit the article we wrote about this. Don't forget to visit rockandrollgarage.com. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I see you later.